for New York State. Thanks, Shala. I am on the Canadian side, but I look out my back window. I could swim. Well, I could probably get very wet and icy right now getting to New York, but I can see the US from my window. So I'm very glad to be here. And I'm a member of both IAP2 Canada and IAP2 USA. So I want to start first by transitioning you into the space. I think there's always such an opportunity to dive in and go right to the agenda. And I think for this topic in particular, it's a really great opportunity to just pause and maybe breathe. And if you're eating your lunch, just kind of settle in and listen for a second. So I often do a reading or a poem at the beginning, I'm going to start with one that I have been going back to again and again lately because I need it. I need the reminders. So this comes from a woman named Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and it's a letter and a poem, and it's entitled "We Were Made for These Times." So I'm not going to read the whole thing, just a couple of lines from it. In any dark time, there is a tendency to veer toward fainting over how much is wrong or unmended in the world. Do not focus on that. We are needed. That is all we can know. And though we meet resistance, we more so will meet great souls who will hail us and love us and guide us, and we will know them when they appear. You have all the resource you need to ride any wave, to surface from any trough. Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor, suffering world, will help immensely. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small, determined group who will not give up during the first, second, or 100th gale. One of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. The light of the soul throws sparks, can send up flares, builds signal fires, causes proper matters to catch fire. To display the lantern of soul in shadowy times like these, to be fierce and to show mercy toward others, both are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. So thank you. Thank you for listening. I go back again and again to that letter from Clarissa Pinkola Estes because that message of "we were made for these times," it was written in the 70s, but it feels like it's a message we need right now. So welcome to this webinar. So just to be clear on expectations, it's not a training, it's not a workshop. It's sort of brief, concise, focused on a couple of topics, or topic of resilience. I want to invite you to gather with courage and kindness in support of each other. I'm going to have my chat open, so I will be watching for comments and questions, and I'm going to stop at the end to make sure that there's time for people to ask questions or share stories as well. So I just want you to know that I'll be kind of watching the chat, but it's a little bit more one topic, 1 hour, information mostly out, and then let's reflect together. So if things come up for you, please put them in chat. There will be a couple of times that I'm going to ask you to actively participate, and so I invite you to do that rather than just receive when I invite you to do that. So here's what we're going to cover today. Sort of why this, why now, why this topic. I think that these webinars that I deliver through, I'm just going to invite anybody who's unmuted to go ahead and mute yourself. Thank you very much. These webinars, I deliver monthly webinars in my organization, and I do it because I have a colleague, Rick Tamlin, who often says, if you want it, it is wanted. It's, you know, that my yearning is probably indicative of the yearning of other people as well. And so this topic is really near and dear to my heart from personal experience, but also because I think it's a thing we need each other right now. We need to support each other. We need to be in community that, you know, we're on the front lines of these big, heavy, challenging, tense, crunchy conversations. And so to be able to be in community together is a thing that's incredibly helpful. I want to define resilience, what it looks like, I think, and what it means. And then I'm going to provide you some tools and tips and practices that have worked for me. And hopefully you can adapt them to what works for you. And I invite stories and lessons and approaches as we go. I'm going to share a couple stories, and I'll have time at the end for anyone else who wants to share a story too. So why this? Why now? So I want to be really clear. I think I often say, you know, we're living in unprecedented times, but we are actually living in unprecedented times. There's something called the Global Uncertainty Index, and it is at an all-time high. We, you know, through climate change, the world is on fire, but the emotional temperature is also rising. And so, you know, polarization is one of the greatest risks facing humanity right now, along with misinformation. And the public arena, the space in community between organizations and community, even within community itself, is pretty hot. Anger and fear seem to be the prevalent emotions. And it's not that there aren't other emotions present, it's just that those seems to be the ones that are quick to flare, like really reactive, like, you know, and they pass between people really fast. There is no clear path forward for so many of the challenges we are facing globally, nationally, in our communities, in our organizations. And so the complexity makes it harder to solve problems. And then you layer on polarization and high emotion and the messiness of power dynamics, and people are really struggling. And everyone is looking for help, and resources are thin and oftentimes getting thinner. And I can feel, I speak for myself, I can feel my own capacity getting stretched really thin on a pretty regular basis. Now, you know, anecdotally, all the leaders that I talk to and the organizations that I work with and the communities I talk to, they talk about overwhelm and exhaustion and despair and challenge and fear and anger and frustration and all those emotions that kind of shut us down and even maybe pull us under. But actually research shows that that's real. So in Canada, 1 in 3 employees are experiencing stress and burnout. 1 in 5 in the UK, and in the US, 66% of employees in organizations have reported feeling struggling with pressure, overwhelm, stress, and burnout. So it's real. It's happening around us, between us, and also inside of us. This reactivity, this emotion. And then when our very jobs are to hold those conversations that matter the most, it can feel like too much, like the weight of the world is on our shoulders. So I want to ask you a series of questions. And when I ask you each question, I'm going to invite you to respond to that question with using the Zoom tools. So you'll see them at the very bottom. The Zoom tools, there's a react button, and you can click the heart or the Zoom thumbs up. I want to invite you to choose either one that works for you. And when I say, here's an experience, I want to ask if you've ever experienced this thing. And if what I say is part of your truth, then just give me the Zoom thumbs up or the reaction. And I want to invite each of you to just watch the screen, see what happens. So if what I say is true to your experience, and it might be that many of the things I say are true to your experience, go ahead and use those react buttons. Have you ever lost someone you truly love? Had your heart broken? Struggled through an acrimonious divorce, or been the victim of infidelity? If you've ever been through a natural disaster, been a victim of crime, had a car accident, or other trauma, if you've ever been bullied or harassed, lost your job, or experienced financial struggles, if you've ever had a miscarriage or struggled through infertility, if you've ever been confronted with protesters, an angry, unruly group of participants shouting and intimidating you and others, been publicly attacked or shamed online, if you or anyone you love has had to cope with mental illness, dementia, some form of physical impairment, or cope with suicide, if you have ever experienced fear, trepidation, and anxiety when you think of engaging groups of community members, if you've ever had to grit your teeth and work up your courage to do this work, if you have felt helpless, unmotivated, drained, and disengaged, if you've ever struggled to keep doing this work, felt burnt out, stressed, and like your nerves were on the outside of your body. Thank you. So I just want to bear witness to the number of people who put that thumbs up or click that react button for a heart. I think it's just incredible that we don't know what other people's stories are, and yet so many of us have experienced adversity, because adversity doesn't discriminate. It is part of life. It happens across all walks of life and experiences. And stepping into adversity is the very core of this work that we do. You can't do this work, though, unless you are resilient. So thank you very much for just taking a pause, just taking a moment to kind of connect with those things in yourself and to witness what other people have experienced too. So, if adversity is present for all of us, I want to provide what I think is a definition of resilience. So, often the words that are used to define resilience is that it is about bouncing back. So, our ability to bounce back or recover from the adversity that we experience. I've done a lot of work in natural disasters or recovery to natural disaster and community engagement. And oftentimes leaders use the words bounce back better. And I just cringe every time I hear that, because it creates this expectation, or like there's a goal, that if you experience hardship, you should be stronger as a result. So I want to limit it to bounce back, not bounce back better, like somehow you have experienced challenge and then you should be a better person as a result. It does require reserves. It requires, like water in your well. It requires capacity. So adaptability, flexibility. It requires self-awareness to be able to bounce back. It's influenced by many things: relationships, support systems, the amount of power we have, ongoing stress that we experience, the state of our health. It is influenced by countless things. So that means it's going to be different for everyone. There is no way to say, oh, this is what resilience is, and here's your 10-point checklist, because it's individual to how I might respond to a given situation is not the same as how you would. And that's not a right or a wrong. It's about what's our capacity, what's our starting point as well. And then what has happened to us over the course of our lives that has either impacted our resilience, increased our adversity, and or built our capacity. So I want to give you three things I've learned. I'll be truly honest, the hard way. And then I'm going to give you three tools that you could use. So in 2014, so 12 years ago now, which feels like an eternity, I experienced burnout in significant ways. It's the opening chapter in the book I wrote a couple of years ago, but I took 3 months off for a sabbatical to recover from an engagement project that had gone so sideways that I had trended nationally, and it was just a challenge in countless ways. And I thought I was going to take this 3 month sabbatical to write and to, maybe be creative. And instead, what I mostly did was paddleboard and cry. Just over and over and over again. That seemed to be about all I was capable of. It was a professional and a financial crisis, and I didn't recover well. And then in 2022, I experienced it again, or really, maybe I sort of got dropped back into a pit that I hadn't fully recovered from. And that was impacted by, the challenges of the pandemic. And, it felt like a bit of a Jenga tower of adversity, and all my blocks kept getting pulled out. Probably many of you have experienced that. I think it's also a testament to almost 30 years of doing this work and holding space for other people's emotions, trying to find a path forward through the conflict. And, I always use those two words. I do this, with my hands when I talk about holding space. And yet that space can get incredibly heavy that you need to put it down at some point. So here's a couple of things I've learned the hard way over and over and over again. And then I'll give you three tools that work for me because I've had to learn this many times. Number one, life happens, and it happens to all of us in ways that we often aren't that open about, right? Our lives do not look like the lives that get posted on Instagram. So I have actually made a commitment in 2026 to do none of that kind of posting that says, wow, look at my fantastic life, because it's not true. It might be a truth in a moment, but it's not the truth of the wholeness of my experience. And if I'm going to build my resilience and support other people to talk about theirs and create space, then we have to bring all of ourselves to the table and recognize that there are bumps along the way, and give ourselves permission to be honest about those. You have to know your tells and your signals. So that means, like, my tells and my signals that my capacity is diminishing, that I need to take a rest, that I need to build my resilience could be different from yours. And you have to know what yours specifically are. What do they look like? Can you even notice them? Are you paying attention to them? Like, I have, a lifetime of doing this work, and it's really only in the last couple of years that I pay attention to the signals. I knew what they were. I've known what they are for decades, but I don't necessarily pay attention to them. So you don't have to just know what they are. You have to actually listen to those signals that tell you it's time to step back. It's time to build your resilience. In addition, it's really important to improve your relationship with the emotions that are the opposite ones of the constricting, heavy, hard, tense, sad, like the ones that drag you under, to increase your relationship with joy and gratitude and playfulness. I have a colleague who once asked me that, like, my work is about holding space for challenging things. And what was the extent of my own personal relationship with emotions that weren't hard? Like, for sure, I have lots of capacity for anger and other people's anger and fear and anxiety and grief. But how much capacity do I have within myself for joy and gratitude and appreciation and playfulness? And that's not to say that I'm a sad or angry person. It's that I put a lot of effort and energy into holding that space. And how much effort and energy do I put into making snow angels and knitting really ugly hats and, playing board games and, just doing things that bring joy to my life? Brene Brown has a really great quote. I'm going to read it to you. It says, joy collected over time fuels resilience, ensuring we will have reservoirs of emotional strength when hard things do happen. And that's the message there, right? Hold the space, like, be supportive, be in community, help people work through tough things, and then also seek out reserves that, create that foundation, that layer that sediment of joy and gratitude and positivity and playfulness that builds your resilience. So those are three things I have learned the very hard way from two pretty significant episodes of burnout and challenge. So let me give you a couple of tools that I think work. Well, actually, that neuroscience and research tells you work. And hopefully you can adapt them and then they might work for you as well. So I want to start first with stress recovery and your brain. And everything that I point to, I want to offer that this is a practice, not a one off or a magic wand, right? You can't build your resilience if you just wait until you have no resilience. And so has to be an ongoing routine, ritual way of living that increases your resilience. So for starters, I think it would be really fantastic as a society, good luck to me, I know, as a society, if we could redefine our relationship with productivity. So as leaders in this field, we are often focused on the doing, right? The actions that we will undertake, the things that we have to do, everything on our checklist and, setting up the room and inviting people and having our fact sheets and, figuring out our methods, like all the things that we will do. But being, right? We're human beings. I'm sure you've heard that a bazillion times. We're human beings. So we need to balance both the doing and the being and pushing through despite feeling overwhelmed and exhausting, like I just got to finish this, does not build your resilience. It has the opposite effect. And in fact, you get less capable, less productive, less effective if you just keep pushing through, right? Stepping away, stepping back, like focusing on the being side of yourself actually makes you more effective in the long run. You can come back to that thing that you were working on. And it's also a way of defining ourselves, right? Do we define ourselves only as valuable by what we do, by the goals we achieve, by what we accomplish? And I've got four children now. They're all grown, but I watched a lot of children's movies over the years. And the Finding Nemo movies were fantastic because Dory the little fish. If you haven't watched them, you should watch them just because they're so fun. But Dory the little fish would, had a little song and she just kept singing, "Just keep swimming, just keep swimming." And that's not a great mantra for building your resilience. It's the opposite of the kind of mantra you want to have. And so when we think about stress, just keep going, just keep swimming is going to have the opposite of impacts. And so we like to call the impact of stress on our brains, as I like to call it, the Goldilocks of the brain. So when we have too little stress, like we're bored, our brain is sending not enough dopamine or norepinephrine into our body. And so we feel unmotivated. We feel exhausted. We are not creative. We can't really think well. We can't solve problems. But the same is true when we have too much stress. So too much dopamine, too much norepinephrine. Why can I not pronounce that word? Norepinephrine, cortisol, adrenaline take a significant toll, and there's a similar toll. You feel exhausted, full of fatigue, a lack of creativity, a lack of interest, a lack of connection with the world. And so ideally, we want just enough stress to spark creativity, just enough stress to, spark problem solving, to create the opportunity within our brains and in our bodies to be at our best, to bring our very best to our work, to our lives, to our organizations. And so being able to watch physiologically for the experience when you have too little stress and too much stress, it's a really great signal to say, okay, wait, how do we get back in balance? How do we achieve a better physiological and neuroscience response? And so there is a recovery cycle when you experience stress that you can walk through. This is grounded in neuroscience research. So there are 6 steps. The first step of which I'd strongly recommend you don't do, which is to suppress it or just keep swimming or just ignore it or not pay attention to the signals. So suppression is not effective, but it's a thing we, as human beings, we often do, right? You get those first signs of fatigue or exhaustion or irritability or frustration, and you think, I'm just going to keep going, but it's not effective. So next, you want to name the emotion. And then you want to control the aspects of the environment that you can control, recognizing you can't control everything. So, what is within your control? What choices can you make? What challenges can you remove? Where can you say yes or no? Where can you focus or prioritize? Then can you connect to your values? What matters most to you, to your purpose, to your commitments, to even your sources of joy? And then can you find a new perspective? And can you be present to what is happening in this exact moment? So I'll give you a tangible example because that sounds like, okay, great tips, Steph, but thanks, I'm not sure what to do with them. So as a tangible example, suppression for me sounds like I'm exhausted and I'm not functioning very well and I'm not making very good progress, but I'm just going to push through this. That as soon as I start saying that to myself, just 1 more hour, just finish this, just keep going, I know I need to try something different. So for me, I name the emotion. I take a pause, I step back from the situation or from my desk and I say, okay, what am I experiencing? What am I feeling? I'm frustrated, I'm resentful, and I want to give up. So in a situation, I might say, I feel full of despair. I'm tired. I have no new ideas. Whatever it is, name it for yourself and be really honest about it. What are you really experiencing? And then control the environment. Like, for example, what my go to is to walk out of the house or walk away from the conversation or signal to my team that I need to take a break, right? To go for a walk or to just take a couple of minutes and do something creative and fun, to know that when I come back to this, I will perform better. I was in the midst of writing a report yesterday and I was getting slower and slower and slower, trying to process and analyze the data and make sense of it and be of service to this community. And I just thought, okay, you need to stop this. Yeah, you have a deadline on this report, but you need to stop. And so I went and put on my cross country skis and I went out for a couple of kilometers and I was in the sunshine and the cold. And then I came back and thought, okay, all right, now I can go at this. And of course, the whole time I was skiing, I was processing things in the back of my mind. And I came back with new ideas and I was far more productive than if I had just stayed and sat at my desk continuing to write. Now, you can't always do that, but so control the things that you can. What is something you can change about the environment that you are in? Connect to your values and your purpose. So one of the things I often tell myself, and it's connected to reframing and finding a new perspective as well, is that I really love this work and I'm really grateful I get to do work that makes such a difference in the world. I get to versus I have to. I can versus I should, right? When you start using language that feels like it's an obligation or a burden, it's a good signal that you might want to reframe or you might need to step back until you can find that within yourself that it looks different. In addition, the reframing for me, and I actually have this written on a sticky note and posted on my bulletin board as a reminder to myself, because I told you I've had to relearn these lessons many times, that when I fill up my own fuel tank, I can run longer, faster, and stronger and help more people. So I prioritize my own physical health, my emotional health, my spiritual health, my social health over everything else. And when I do that, I am so much better at this work. I'm a better partner. I'm a better mother, I'm a better, community member. All those things are true when I prioritize my own energy needs and resilience. And then mindfulness is just a reminder that there's more to me than today, than this moment, than this situation, and that this too will pass. It helps to put it in a perspective. So that's a tool I would encourage you to use. You can go back to the recording and note down those 6 points, not the first one, not the suppression one, but the other points that relate to stress recovery in your brain. And even just put it up as a reminder for you around your desk and think about, okay, how do I name the emotion, control the environment, connect to, my why, reframe and find a perspective. Okay, so, the second thing I want to offer to you as a tool, which is incredibly important, I think. I said earlier, you need to know the signs and you need to pay attention to them. So, for me, one of the ways of paying attention to them is that I actually document them. I journal every morning, and in the front of my journal, I have a little stop sign I've drawn, and it has all the things that tell me when I need to stop. So I'm not just aware of them, I'm reminded of what my signs are. So the questions I think that are important to ask yourself to find out what your signs and signals are is, what are the signs that you need to pause, shift focus and energy and prioritize your resilience? So what do you see? What do you feel? What do you notice? In the words of resilience researcher from New Zealand, Lucy Horn, what I am doing helping me or harming me? That's an incredibly powerful question, right? Is the choice that I'm making in this moment to push through, to ignore the signs, to just keep going, to interact from a frustrated, fearful, anxious place, serving me and the greater good? And so, is it helping you or is it harming me? And I think that our signs can get broken down into five kind of categories, five kind of signals. And so, I want to give you what that looks like for me, anyways. But you should go through each of these five categories and ask yourself, what does it look like when you need to prioritize or shift focus or change your energy in order to be resilient? Like, what shows up for you? What do you see? What do you feel? What do you hear? What do you experience? So, physically, I get tired. I just get super tired. I get exhausted. I feel kind of dead and dull. I have headaches. I get aches and pains. I get digestive issues. I don't sleep well. Like, I wake up at night thinking about that big problem or that, session that's coming up I have to facilitate. I eat less or I eat less well. So more processed foods, more junk food, right? And you just have to note it. You just need to step back for a second and think, what did I do today physically that helped me or harmed me? You might notice some of those signs playing out. Emotionally, and my husband will tell you this, I get irritable. I am testy, I'm impatient, I'm frustrated, and I just feel dull. Like things that normally would lift me up and make me bright and joyful don't provide the same kind of ring. And that's a great sign that, okay, you need to step back. You need to prioritize your resilience. And stepping back doesn't mean like having a bubble bath or, taking an hour off or going on vacation. I don't think that, remember, I said earlier that resilience is a practice, right? Not a one off. And so those things are lovely. I'm a huge fan of vacations and bubble baths, but they're not going to fix your resilience. They're not going to, layer on sediment on their own. They won't do it. Spiritually, you should look for the signs. Like, what is the thing that you believe in? So it can be faith or religion. It can be connection to something greater than yourself. Like for me, I have a deep and abiding connection to nature. And so my tells that I'm spiritually challenged are a lack of wonder or awe or beauty. And then I often feel just kind of a low grade despair, just a disconnection that all things are wrong in the world. And then socially, I isolate myself. So it's a great tell that I pull back. I'll receive invitations and I'll think, oh no, I don't really feel like it. Or no, I don't really want to take that call. Or I'm not listening well to the people I am in relationship or connection with. They'll tell me something and my mind is still operating over here on this other problem I'm trying to solve. Intellectually, I have low creativity. I don't remember things. I got a lot of to-do lists going, and I'm not that great at problem solving. And so these signals, they're going to be individual for each of us. I mean, some of them might be similar, like the exhaustion or the memory challenges or the lack of problem solving or the irritability. Some of those will be common tells for many of us, but you need to find them for yourself. What are your signals and tells? And I think a thing that's really important to just kind of touch on here is that people often say you just need to set boundaries, right? You just need to say no. But I think in the absence of self-awareness, these are just that's a pretty useless concept, right? You can just say no to a bunch of things, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're building your resilience. So I want you to think bigger from a more holistic viewpoint, right? What actually makes you the best version of yourself? And how do you create the conditions that make that happen? Okay, so this is thing number 3, and I'm going to stop about 10 minutes. Oh, that's a great question in chat. I'm going to come back to that because I don't know if I have an answer for it, but I'm going to come back to that. So this is thing number 3, and I'll stop about 10 minutes before the end, so I can take questions or stories or anything that comes up for you that you want to share. So, thing number 3, be self aware. Know what keeps you whole. So you've got choices, right? Research in positive psychology tells us that resilience is built over time, right? That's why it's a practice, not an event or one activity or one vacation. So, and there are some incredible strategies if you think about them from the perspective of questions. How can I comfort myself in this moment, in this situation? What actions can I take? So focusing on the doing, right? What options do I have available to create discernment, right? We almost always have choice. So, what can we choose or control? And what social resources can I draw on? Like, how can I ask for help, which can be an incredibly challenging or difficult thing to do, but asking for help, I think, is a mark of exceptional courage to say, I need some support. I need something from other people to help me through this moment or to become more resilient. So I do a thing once a year, and it usually happens in September because for me, September always feels like the start of a school year. So it feels like the start of a new year. And I create a thing called it looks like a tic-tac-toe board. And I take a board and it has 9 squares. And I ask myself, what keeps me whole? What connects me to myself? What supports me to live a full and vibrant life? What fuels joy? And I make that tic-tac-toe board and I fill out every square. What are the things that make me whole? You can ask that question in a different way. I recently came across this fantastic sign. I think it's so great, called the recombobulation area. I wonder if anybody's from Milwaukee. This is apparently in the Milwaukee airport. The recombobulation area happens after you go through security. You know, it's the discombobulation that happens when we travel and we go through security and we drop. Yeah, okay, fantastic. Yeah. And we, drop things and we lose things and we forget things behind. But I think we can also ask that question as it relates to resilience. Like, what do you need to recombobulate? To what is in your recombobulation area? And are you watching for the signs so you can pause at the recombobulating area? I even love the word, right? It's so memorable. So you can ask the questions in different ways. What keeps you whole? What makes you vibrant and allows you to do good work and live a good life? Or what's in your recombobulation area? So here's what ends up on my tic-tac-toe board. Things like creativity, time in nature, connection, like spending time with people I love, fun and playfulness, nurturing things. I have an enormous vegetable garden every summer. physical movement, exercise, like sex could be in there. And well, it is in there for me, but I don't write it on my board. But now I've told you that it's in there. So, okay, too much information, way too much information. Time alone, right? If I spend too much time with other people, especially lots of time with people holding space for their challenges, I need time alone to reflect and process freedom, like travel, adventure, exploration, and good work in the world. Now, this is not about taking your life and expanding it across all nine squares equally, like saying, oh, I'm going to only put, an hour into this and an hour. It's not about balance in the sense of time distribution. It's about energy distribution. So I have one square that's about good work in the world. But when that's the only square I put all my energy into, then I notice all the signs that I need to build my resilience. And I step back and think, okay, what else could I put my energy? Where else could I focus? And, what else will help me build my resilience in this moment? So it's about having options and choices so that you could, so that you can notice and so that you can be a whole person in your life. So I want to go back to those words of Clarissa Pinkola Estes. I think she said it very, very best that we were made for these times, that we are needed. That is all we can know. But that ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach, in our reach, to make choices, to be present to ourselves and to others as we do this work, to refill our well so that when we go back at it and we hold the space, we are more capable, we are more whole, we are more able. So, and we can ask for help, we can support each other, we can be in community. So, thank you for listening. I want to invite you to. Oh, hold on one second. I want to invite you if you're interested. I offer, like I said, monthly webinars, and so I'd be thrilled to have you sign up. They're free, and just like IAP2 USA's. And I also have just launched a 6-month leadership program and focused on these times, the challenging times that we're in, the tumultuous, polarized, challenging times. And so if you're interested in that, I've posted those into chat. So let's take questions. I probably don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to give it a try. So I see that there's a couple in chat, and you're welcome to put your hand up to ask. Okay, so I'm going to answer a couple. So Sonia, you had a question that says, do the whole items get placed randomly on the tic-tac-toe board, or should there be an order? And you could 100% make it a bingo card. Absolutely. There, there is an order, and I think you have to decide for yourself what it is. When I very first started this practice, I put work in the world at the very center. And then I found that that made me feel like that was the most important thing. So I don't know if you noticed that the center square for me is full of fun and playfulness now. And that goes to increasing my relationship with joy and playfulness and positivity. So I've intentionally chosen that. I think you might need to ask yourself, where's the biggest stretch you need to have? What's the thing that fills you up and fuels you maybe the fastest or creates the biggest shift in energy for you? That's the thing I'd put in the center of your bingo card. Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, there was another question. How do we distinguish between the signals and the signs and women's monthly issues or cycles from this? I think it's about self awareness and self knowledge, knowing the pattern and the physiology of your body. I mean, that's my simple answer to that is that women have monthly cycles and you know when it's coming, you know when it happens, you know when it ends, and you know what you physically feel like. And what's different? Like, is there an intensity to it that is, bigger because you are lacking resilience? And just watching your own body, paying attention and noticing your own signals. Somebody else. What questions, maybe what comes up for you? Have you got stories or examples? What practices do you use? Just feel free to unmute yourself. Put your hand up, whatever works.
Would you mind repeating that question?
The question I just asked right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yes. What, who has a question for me or who wants to share a practice or an example of how they build their resilience?
Okay, I'll take that then and ask this question.
Yeah.
Say you're in a world that sees the world one way and you see the world either slightly or greatly another way, but
Yeah.
you're surrounded by all of these people and you have to deal with them in your personal relationships, your professional relationships. Any advice on getting yourself, because I tend to put my walls up when I hear things that where I'm automatically placing people in categories, as I think we all do from time to
Yeah.
time. And I find that I miss out on a lot of great stuff if I put those walls up and walk out. Uh,
Yeah.
and so I'm constantly telling myself, keep your mouth shut, get through this. But any suggestions on how to deal with the inner conflict there so that it doesn't become outer conflict? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely, Sonia. Absolutely. And I 100% hear you on that. And one of the things that happens when we get tighter and heavier, it's like we get a crust over our heart that that results in judgment and assumptions and this feeling of total misalignment in our relationships or in our organization. And that I just want to affirm how hard that is, how challenging that is to be in that situation. And I think the solution for me, so I'll just speak for myself, the solution is to soften. And that sounds totally counterintuitive. But how can you soften towards those people, towards those situations? How can you build your curiosity? How can you even increase your cognitive complexity or your social complexity? Like, who are you in relationship? Who with? Who are you seeking out? Or are you actively seeking out people who demonstrably think differently than you and learning their stories, not just their opinions, but how they came to those conclusions, right? Seeking out the whole of someone else and where they are to soften towards them as human beings, to find the humanity in other people, that often allows you to offer the humanity in yourself, right? So it's not about do we agree with each other, but instead, where can we see the human being in someone else and soften towards that? Which goes a long way to dealing with polarization, but it's really hard work because you have to find that open heart inside of you and then show up that way in your interactions. It's a good question, Sonia, but it's not easily done. So maybe even just a reminder to yourself to ask that question, like, how do I soften to this person in this situation? How do I get more curious? um
Beautiful
yeah.
response. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for asking it. Yeah. Oh, and thanks for the contributions in chat. Yeah, that it's helpful to humanize folks. Yeah, that's great. And I'm just reading. Oh, I'm really glad, Ariel. Thank you. Oh, and for your examples too. That's great. That's great. Time for relationships and hobbies. Yeah, to be more of a the fullness to yourself. That's great. Anybody else want to share a story, ask a question, offer a practice? Oh, Caitlin, that's a great question. How should you respond when others around you promote the just keep swimming mindset rather than other stress recovery methods? Well, I think so. Here's the thing I do. I give myself permission, number one, to not swim anymore and to do something else. So that's the first thing, is giving yourself permission to not be defined by that. And then the second thing I often do is set context. I know I do my very best work when I feel, refreshed and creative and capable and, present. And so I need to step away. So that means I might be 24 hours late with this, or, I promise to get it to you, by tomorrow morning instead of tonight, right? Or whatever it is, so that you're making a commitment within the setting of your context, but you're also being really clear when you're most productive, when you are most effective, when you do perform best, and inviting them to support you in that. So, so context, I think, is incredibly important. Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting, Lewis. Yeah, it is very interesting. I think maybe it's a demographics of our profession as well. Yeah, but I do think that's shifting. From a gender-based perspective, I've seen a lot more people who identify as male entering the profession. But good question. Great observation, Lewis. Uh, so many good questions. The stop swimming is a really hard one because we live in a society that defines us by productivity, right? What have you accomplished lately? How effective and productive are you? And you're solo in the work and belong to an organization with a 40-hour work week expectation. I think it's not about the number of hours, it's more about the effectiveness. Maybe that's an opportunity to have a brave conversation with the folks that you're in relationship with, Clancy. Like to negotiate is, you know, what are their expectations? What are the goals? What are they looking for you to produce? And making commitments to achieve those things versus achieving 40 hours. Like you can achieve 40 hours that are totally unproductive and ineffective. And so more about the what are their expectations from you, not in terms of it's what we count matters. And so what are we counting here? Are we counting the quality of your work or the number of hours that you sit at your desk? So maybe an opportunity to just have that conversation. Oh, that's great, Francisca. Being authentic, permission for others. Yeah. Thank you, folks. It's been delightful being with you. Like I said at the beginning, right? If you want it, it is wanted. So being in community, I think, is just deeply important for us as we do this work and we navigate these times. And yeah, well, you know how to reach me. You're registered. You saw my bio. Please reach out if you have practices, comments, questions. I'm always happy to connect. I'm very grateful for community and for colleagues. Thank you to all of you for being here. I'll stay on for another minute or two in case anybody wants to share.
Yes, thank you, Steph, and thank you everybody for joining us today. If there's any questions, please let us know or enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, folks. Okay,
Yeah,
that's great.
wonderful. Great.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, we'll be in touch. I really appreciate you putting this on today. It was a great session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks very much.
we'll talk
Good
soon.
to be with you.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.